Did you know that there are rules when it comes to word balloons? I actually have them here. Allow me to read them to you. Rule number 1, you can't have more than 20 words in a word balloon. Rule number 2, you shouldn't have more than 35 words per page. Rule number 3, the text should be in a diamond shape. Rule number 4, the length of your balloon tail matters. Rule number 5, and rule number 281, point the tail of the word balloon at the talker's mouth. Even I can admit that's quite a lot to remember. So if you take nothing else away from this video, I want to first talk to you about the secret H rule. It's not really secret, I just wanted it to sound more intriguing. Let me know in the comments if you're intrigued. Anyway, the H rule. Why the letter H? Well, it's kind of boxy and it's pretty uniform. That's why I use it anyway. So how do you use it? Well, look at this word balloon here. Lots of text, and to me this is obviously cramped. But if you're looking at that word balloon and you think it's fine, then get a letter H and put it in each of the corners. If it can barely fit, or in this case can hardly fit at all, then you need more space between the edges of your word balloon and your text. How much space? Well, that's kind of up to you, and there's a lot that you can do with space within the word balloon that I'll cover more at the end of this video. But for normal word balloons, something like this feels about right. If you need specific advice, then just use the gap the H provides you. The reason you want space around the text within your word balloon is to simply make it easier for your audience to read. Have you ever tried to read a blog post or newsletter that looks like this? It's pretty tough. But reading the same blog post or newsletter like this is much easier, even though it's the exact same word count and content. Plus, it can really help those with dyslexia to read the content if it's spaced out like that. This is actually my email newsletter, which you can subscribe for free. So, word count. Is there one? Well, if you Google that, then the answer seems to be yes, but I don't really like it. I'm kind of torn between giving clear, solid advice about the word count in a word balloon and what I really think about it, which is it depends. But it depends doesn't really help you, so let me show you through some examples. If we go back to that original word balloon and I just make the word balloon bigger, then it's clearly an improvement. But you could argue that there are still too many words within that word balloon, but I don't think that's the problem with it. I don't think you should look at the words within a word balloon as a counting game. Instead, it should be about what the characters are saying. I mentioned some of this in this video here, and we're going to go over some of these things now, but in much more detail. I'm going to reuse the speech that I used in this video from the Dark Knight movie. I already made it, so why not? Now, based on the script, I know that the speech starts in this panel here and it ends in that panel there, which is good. Most of you will know when your characters start and finish speaking, but knowing how to spread that speech out over one panel or more than one panel can be quite challenging unless you think of it as expressions and acting. The expressions are the collection of words and the acting is the way those words are said. Let's break this speech down to show you what I mean. I've put this part of the speech in one word balloon. Now, looking at the context of this speech, I'm going to break it up into about 2 expressions. The mayor starts by talking about the public, but then he talks about the mob, politicians, journalists, and so on. So we can have one word balloon for this part and another word balloon for this part. And that works a lot better. It's a lot easier to read. But that's just formatting, and it's only step 1 of this process, because step 2 is about acting. Acting is not just about what the characters look like or their body language, it's the way that they speak. So when you're reading your script and you're reading your character's dialogue, try and read it in their voice. Literally act it out. You can do this in your head or out loud if you're on your own, or you could do it with friends.
As I am.
Now, a lot of this is going to depend on the character's personality and the situation that they find themselves in. Because I don't know your character's personality or their situation, I'm just going to stick with the Gotham Mayor. Very quick plug, I'm starting a cohort-based live course in April, so if you need help with your specific script in getting it ready for the artist and budgeting and marketing and all that stuff, then check out the link in the description. Right, let's do this. I've got a few options with these word balloons. If I want the mayor to be methodical in the way he speaks, then I might separate the word balloons out like this. I've gone from 2 word balloons to 6. But you'll notice that some of the word balloons were squished together and others were connected by a tail. When and why should you do this? Remember expressions and acting? That's what we're going to apply here. I think balloons 1 and 2 are part of the same expression because the mayor is talking about the same thing. First, he talks about the public liking Dent and then finishes that thought off with, "That's the only reason this might fly." They're 2 similar thoughts within the same expression, so let's squish these 2 together. You could do the same for word balloon 3, but I want to move this word balloon away from these 2 because it represents the transition of the speech. I sense a change in tone in the mayor as he says, "They're all coming after you now." And so I want this new expression separate from the first one. He's now talking about the mob. This is where I really start to focus on the acting side of things. I want the mayor to pause after he says, "not just a mob," because I think it helps with increasing the tension in what he's saying. So I start off with that sentence in this balloon, then add another balloon to finish off with politicians, journalists, cops. To really show you how the layout of the speech within the word balloons impacts the way that our characters talk, I'm going to read it out in one word balloon and then read it out over those separate word balloons to see the difference. You decide which one you think is better. The public likes you, Dent. That's the only reason this might fly. But that means it's on you. They're all coming after you now. Not just a mob, politicians, journalists, cops, anyone whose wallet is about to get lighter. The public likes you, Dent. That's the only reason this might fly. But that means it's on you. They're coming after you now. Not just a mob, politicians, journalists, cops, anyone whose wallet's about to get lighter. For me, the second version's better. I've applied this to the rest of the page, which is available on my Patreon, so you can see the conclusion of that page by clicking the link in the description. That's my last plug, I promise. As you may have already been able to tell, there isn't really a rule for this. I didn't base the word count, the balloon shape, or the balloon size on how many words there are. It was based on how I wanted my character to talk and where the balloons fit within the scene and panel. This is another reason why it's incredibly important to plan out your word balloons as early as possible. The only rules that you should be concerned with is how it impacts the audience. In what ways can you make it as easy, enjoyable, and impactful for your audience to read? Space is your friend. And speaking of space, here are a few ways that you can utilize it for different effects. A lot of space around a word balloon can give an echoey effect, as if the character is talking in a large room. Or if a character is talking very quietly, you can both increase the space of the word balloon and decrease the size of the font. That reads like someone is talking quietly just by using the empty space. It could also signify emotion, like loneliness or sadness. Again, think about your characters as people, real life people, and what they're feeling as they speak. You can take that secret H rule and ignore it entirely in the case that your character is yelling. I'd use this if they're screaming, like full on, turn it up to 11, screaming. You could even have the letters overlap the bounds of the word balloon as if the character is breaking the sound barrier. Use this sparingly though, because if you use it all the time, it kind of loses its effect. And I'm going to touch on font briefly because I know that that's what I'd want to know about. So, font. What is the correct font to use for your word balloons? Well, the best font by a country mile is one that is easy to read. That's it. Uppercase or lowercase, don't care. The question you should look to answer is this easy to read? And if the answer is yes, then it's the correct font. The single most important rule is not a rule at all. It's a question. And the question is this easy for my audience to follow? And is it giving the biggest and best impact to the script? The answer you're looking for is yes. And if you're a writer thinking you don't really need to know any of this stuff, then you're wrong, because you do. Word balloons are a huge topic that trip a lot of us up, and so if you're still feeling a bit confused, then watch this video next.